All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ole Miss After Dark. Me and Hitch are back with y'all once again on this Sunday to talk about the huge Ole Miss win against Arkansas, went into Fayetteville and absolutely dominated the Hogs, a place that Ole Miss has really struggled to win games at. We talked about that pretty much throughout the year, even back in the off season. It's the first time we've won there since 2008. I was actually at that 2008 game. That was Houston Nutt's first year at Ole Miss and his return to Fayetteville. Pretty ruckus crowd that night in Fayetteville, to say the least, but ended up coming away with the win then. And here we are, Lord, what would that be, 16 years later, finally with another one up there in Fayetteville, and did it in dominating fashion. Hitch, the offense obviously looked really good. This is kind of what we expected to see out of this team all year long. Going back to the offseason, you thought, well, how could Ole Miss ever lose with an offense as explosive as this one, with the defense that's supposed to be much improved, and obviously it has been. Defense has been the shining part of this team, most consistent part throughout the year, but the offense finally showed up. Jackson Dart with a huge game. Obviously, Jordan Watkins, Daquan Wright had an incredible game, and Caden Lee as well. Just kind of what did you see out of this Ole Miss offense this past Saturday?
Before I get there, did you say 2008?
Yeah.
Is that the same year? Also, earlier in the year, you know me and my crazy brain, how it picks up all the stuff that you say that doesn't mean anything. 2008, was that the same year that last year that we won in Baton Rouge?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was.
Okay. Yeah, when you said 2008, my mind went, it's like, did he said that number before? And I thought it was maybe Baton Rouge. Cool. Yeah, that was a pointless, sorry. But yeah, the offense was so much fun to watch, right? Like, I think I sent you a message yesterday that said, by no means am I saying I don't want Trey Harris in the lineup at all. I want him in there every snap. But it really feels like when he's not in there, Dart spreads the ball around like crazy, and the offense, just looks like you would expect it to look. Yeah, it just looks like you expected it to look every other week. But yeah, I mean, the defense, we'll talk about that. I'm sure we don't have – it's the same thing every week pretty much the past couple about the defense and that defensive line. But the offense showed up yesterday and hung 63 on the Razorbacks. And boy, it felt good to watch a game in Fayetteville where pretty much from the first kick, never had any worry. And boy, that was nice.
Yeah, and look, this is a good Arkansas team as well, right? They were 5-3 coming into the game, 3-2 in the SEC. Really had things moving in the right direction. Had a blowout win against Mississippi State last weekend. They welcomed Tennessee into the exact same stadium that we played in yesterday, and that's Tennessee's only loss of the year. And then this has been a really good Arkansas defense that Ole Miss really took advantage of. I thought it was interesting. I listened to Lane Kiffin's press conference after the game last night or yesterday, and he kept talking. He would never say the name, but they were asking about the offense and the game plan and all that. He kept giving a bunch of credit to Charlie Weiss, the players, obviously, for preparing. But he kept talking about one guy that they were looking to attack with Jordan Watkins specifically, and they kept moving him from the right side to the left side, wherever they had to put him to get him on that one guy. I haven't gone back and rewatched the game to find out who that one guy is. But kudos to this coaching staff for finding what they thought was an advantage and exploiting it, because Jordan Watkins goes absolutely nuts. I know y'all know by now, but he ends up with 8 catches on 9 targets for 254 yards and 5 touchdowns. And quite frankly, it didn't look like anybody was around him basically all game. So whatever they saw on film against one particular guy that they wanted Jordan Watkins to be matched up against, worked like a dream.
Yeah, I mean, it really did. I'm glad that you listened to that and heard that, because that makes a lot of sense. Now that Jordan Watkins, had so many catches, because when a quarterback of Jackson Dart's caliber sees that matchup that they're looking for, then that's going to be his first read, probably where he's going. And it shows 8 receptions, 254, 30 yard. You had 2 guys yesterday that were over 25 yards, per catch, and they each had more than 5 catches or more. So, yeah. Whatever it was that they saw on film that they thought they could exploit, they were 100% right, and they exploited 100%.
It. Yeah, and I think a lot of this goes back to, and again, credit to this coaching staff. You heard a lot going into the bye week. There's going to be a lot of shuffling on the offensive line, right? That's something they had to figure out, something we really struggled with going into that bye week, kind of led to the losses against Kentucky, against LSU. We really struggled to protect Dart. And I know me and you have talked a lot about how it seemed to get in Dart's head a little bit. He sped up a little faster, throwing off his back foot a lot. Against Arkansas, he really seemed to stand in there, trust the protection, and when he let it rip, it goes back to what you said back after that LSU game. He was throwing the ball. He wasn't aiming it. He saw a mismatch, saw the route, saw it ahead of time, and he just let that sucker rip. On point, front foot, really accurate. Just a really good job by the offensive line with Micah Pettis back in there nonetheless. You heard a lot about Jaden Williams going to be playing right tackle last week, and I'm not sure he even recorded a single snap against Arkansas. If he did, it wasn't a whole lot, but because it was Pounds at left tackle, Pettis at right tackle, it was one thing I was watching all game long, and that seemed to be where we stuck until things really got out of hand there in the fourth quarter. So kudos to this offensive line and that staff figuring out what they need to do, because the last 2 weeks, the pass protection has been really solid, and that's obviously helped this offense take off a little bit, particularly in the last 6 quarters, second half against Oklahoma, and obviously we saw what happened in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I'm so glad you pay attention to stuff like that, because the offensive line, right, I couldn't even tell you which one's a tackle, which one's a guard, right? I probably shouldn't admit that being on here, but I don't pay any attention to it. It just –
Do you know who the center is? Do you know which
one
that is?
I do get that. That's Balfour William Ruff III, right? Balfour William Ruff III played center, so I got that. That's right. Down. I know that.
BWR3.
And probably I could figure it out if I tried real hard. It just doesn't interest me, the names of the positions. But I'm glad you mentioned it. But going back to Dart, is like it really felt like it started last week. He started like to get into a rhythm. Like it felt like he was starting to get into a rhythm, and then maybe we would run a couple of plays, lose a yard, and have to punt, something like that. It didn't seem like he ever fully got into a rhythm. And then yesterday, man, it really felt like he was throwing the ball with a lot of confidence, and it looked good. Like, and that's kind of what I've been saying the past couple of weeks is like, there's a difference in throwing it and throwing it with confidence. Like, and sometimes you can tell when a guy throws the ball and you go, oh, that's a touchdown, right? Before you even see the receiver on the screen, because the way he throws it. And man, it really looked like Dart was throwing the ball with confidence yesterday. And it's because of what you said, that offensive line, he's not having to speed up that clock in his head that tells him when he needs to panic or when he needs to start running. And that offensive line, right, the past couple of weeks have really done a great job in doing that. And man, it couldn't come at a better time for that to be going on and for Dart to be clicking with who we've got, coming into town next week.
Yeah, and that's, I think, going to be one of the more interesting things for me when Saturday finally rolls around. 2:30 hits, they line up, take the first snap. Who is going to be out there on that offensive line? Because what you've seen these last couple of weeks, it would be hard pressed to make any changes there. But if Jaden Williams is healthy and ready to go, he has been your most consistent and best offensive lineman all year before he ended up getting hurt. Do you throw him back in there? Or do you keep whatever's going on with those 5 that you've been playing the last couple of weeks, minus Michael Pettis, obviously 2 weeks ago? He didn't play a couple of weeks ago against Oklahoma. Stepped in, though, did a really good job there at right tackle, so credited him there for stepping back in and playing one heck of a game. Run blocking's been a little bit of an issue. We didn't run it particularly well. I think we ended up with 132 yards rushing on 42 carries. That's only 3.1 yards per carry. But look, I guess you can give them a little bit of credit. They were going to sit there and keep hammering away no matter what. If you're only averaging a little over 3 yards a carry and you still run it 42 times and put up 63 points, then you're at least committed to running the ball. But I do think that's one thing that we're going to have to probably get better at as the year goes on, but you're not going to hear me nitpick an offense that puts up 63 points.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, you've got two right up there at the top with leading the team in not only attempts but yards, and I mean, I guess that's probably skewed a little bit by the Henry Parrish injury because he had 10 and Dart had 10. So I mean, Parrish probably would have had more carries if he hadn't got hurt there. But
I did think that that there was a more conscious effort this week. It's the first time I've seen it all year long, and I understand why we haven't seen it up to this point. Our backs are against the wall. We've got to throw everything at them we got. But there was a lot more designed quarterback runs. You saw a lot more quarterback power from Jackson Dart. His runs Saturday against Arkansas weren't just scrambles, getting out of the pocket, finding open space and taking off. There were designed runs for Jackson to make him a focal point of the running game. And look, that changes everything with this offense when he's able to do it, but you just want to keep him healthy. So it's kind of a give and take, something you got to balance out as much as you can. But he's really good at it and really effective. And we were able to see that Saturday really for the first time all year.
Yeah. I mean, as long as I don't mind seeing him run the ball. Like I like that aspect of the game. Just slide, take care of the ball. Let's be careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but and then obviously we had that really bad injury from Henry Parrish. No word yet on what it was. Didn't look good, obviously, on TV. That can be, a little deceiving sometimes. I'd be surprised if it wasn't a serious injury, but hopefully it wasn't. He'll be able to get back out there at some point this year, but that did look really nasty. So hoping the best for him. Did. And then,
luckily we had Bentley that we could slide right in there. That's the good thing about it is when a guy goes down like that, you've got a running back like Ulysses Bentley that you can just slide right up in there and kind of one of those carries. It worked out well.
Yeah, and then but then you look up and Ulysses Bentley ended up with the same number of carries as Jason Albritton. No disrespect to Jason, I'm sure he's a fine kid, but I don't know who the hell he is. Bentley 5 carries, 11 yards, 2.2 per carry. Dominique Thomas was the guy that ended up getting the carries after Parrish went out, finished with 10. 41 yards, 4.1 yards a carry. Did a good job, right?
Ran tough between the tackles, right? Like I didn't hate seeing him run it. He looked good running it. Just curious
as to why that was the mindset. But Kiffin did
second string means second string, brother.
Yeah, that's right. They put out the depth charts for a reason. You can take those things to the bank, as we all know well, right? But no, look. Thomas was a guy that Kiffin pointed out in his post-game press conference. He said that he was a guy that has played well in practice, looked good running the ball, so they wanted to give him meaningful carries this weekend. Is that true or not? Who the hell knows? But I guess you'll have to take him at his word at that right now. And barring some kind of miracle with this Henry Parrish injury, I think that's who you end up seeing at starting running back against Georgia, I guess. It's definitely something you've got to figure out between him, Bentley, Matt Jones, if he's healthy enough to play. I'm pretty sure I saw him active in pads going through warm-ups. He did not register a carry this game against Arkansas. But that's all stuff they've got, basically a week to figure out. Shifting gears here to the receiving part real quick before we move on to the defense. We already talked about Jordan Watkins. Look, Daquan Wright, what a game for him. No Caden Prescorn wasn't able to go. He ends up with 9 catches for 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. One of those, I believe, was from Austin Simmons when he came into the game. Daquan Wright looked really good out there running around, making plays. And then Caden Lee, he's just a big play waiting to happen, 5 catches for 127.
Yeah, I mean, great. Man, I love seeing Daquan Wright go out there and catch some balls. I think I sent you a message in the first half or something. It was like, what's he got, like 8 catches already or something? Yeah. I think it was 6. But, it was good to see that. But I like to watch him run because he's so big. Like, he's so much bigger than I don't know why, but when I see him, I think, God, he is so big, and he just runs through people. And he's athletic, which is great too. It just gives us another option, which Dart, I mean, and we talked about this last week. we've started seeing the tight end incorporated more in the passing game a little more, and also that is helping Dart. That's taking pressure off Dart because he knows he can trust those guys. So, yeah, I love seeing Daquan Wright because we're definitely going to need him this coming weekend to have another big game.
Yeah, and then hopefully you get Caden Prescorn back. That'll help. Hopefully we have Trey Harris back, and that'll help as well. Maybe where this offense is starting to get fully healthy outside of that running back position. But look, it's set up for a huge game against Georgia, obviously, and offense is clicking at the right time. So hopefully they can keep that momentum going. I do want to shift real quick to the defense right here, Hitch, because yes, they gave up 30 some odd points or whatever it was, but I still thought they played really well, especially early, right? We get down there at the 1 yard line, go for it, don't get it. Arkansas's backed up on the 1 yard line. 3 plays later, we end up getting the fumble in the end zone, recovering it for a touchdown, getting back on track. And this front has just been unbelievable. I know we talk about it over and over and over again every single time we record, but I don't know how you continue to gloss over it because this defensive front – not only the linemen, but the linebackers as well. They do a good job rushing the passer, and you end up with TJ Dodery leading tied for the lead in sacks with Pooh Paul and Trey Washington. All three of those had 6 tackles altogether, but Dodery ended up with 2 sacks. Perkins with a half a sack, and he made one hell of a play. I know it wasn't a fumble, but him running down the Arkansas quarterback there. There were definitely 2 different speeds going on at that point, and Sunscreen really showed what he could do there running him down. But he ends up with a half a sack. Xavier Harris with the sack, Princely with 2 sacks. He's been an absolute monster since he's come back from injury. True freshman Cam Franklin with the sack. William Eccles with a half a sack as well. Our local guy from here in Houston, Mississippi. Walter Nolan, you're not going to find it in the box score with only 2 tackles and a half a sack. But he was a monster all night long as well. He blew up the middle of that Arkansas offensive line and didn't let them get anything going. This defensive front is as elite as it could possibly be, and we've seen it all year long, and they're really going to need to bring their A game against the Georgia team next week that's kind of struggled, right? Beck has really struggled throwing it to the right team. Get pressure on him. So that's what I'm looking for here. But another great job by this Ole Miss defense.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that Perkins play up on that fumble because I had forgotten about it. But man, I remember I was sitting there watching that and thought, I don't know that I've ever seen such a difference in speed of like a guy who can run, a quarterback, right? Like Taylor Green can run, and then Suntarine Perkins literally walked him down. Like that's the definition of walked him down. And it was I knew he was fast. I didn't know he was that fast. But anyway, I think that I don't know that the game plan was this, but it looked like early on the game plan was we're watching you, Taylor Green. We're not going to let you beat us with your legs. You're going to have to beat us with your arm. He didn't get loose like we were kind of afraid that he might. And, that front kept him in line. We had some guys. Nobody had a huge game. But when you look at the box score, you see 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. The defense as a whole had a huge game. I mean, that's like those numbers that that's last week's numbers, right? Was it last week that we had 9 and 15 or something crazy?
Yeah, it was 9 according to the Ole Miss side. I think Oklahoma actually had it at 10, so there was a little bit of difference between the Oklahoma and Ole Miss sides. But yeah, I think we're going with 9 just because that's what Ole Miss says. Taylor Green, by the way, gets knocked out of this game in I think around halftime, something like that. But Malachi Singleton, the young kid that come in for Arkansas, played really, really well. Kind of showed flashes of being able to run this offense under Bobby Petrino. He ends up going 11 for 14, 207 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, 3 sacks though. Runs it 8 times for 69 yards, ends up netting 44 after you take the sacks out of it. Thought he played really well, and that's actually who Suntarine ran down instead of Taylor Green. Taylor ended up getting the shit beat out of him Saturday morning, Fayetteville, Arkansas. He was sacked 5 times, all there in the first half. I mean, they were not going to let him get loose for even a second to see if he could get any kind of spark for this offense. So credit to Golding and the Ole Miss defense for that.
Yeah. I mean, that was the game plan, and they executed it. But just like the offense, right? The defense coming off 2 games, right, where it looks like they're clicking on all. Like you said, they gave up 31 points. You know, that if you just look at that, you think, oh, the defense didn't play great, right? You can't just look at that. Yeah, trust me.
You know, you're up by over 30 points on the road, right? And you're starting to sub some backups in and stuff like that. And those guys aren't going to be as locked in a 5-score game as they are in a 1 or 2-score game, knowing they have to get a stop. They kept everything in front of them, gave up a lot of yards, all that. But look, the defense still played really, really good.
The defense was great, But just like I said, it's a really good time for Dart to be getting into rhythm and the offense to get rolling. Same thing for the defense, right? We've had 2 good games on both sides of the ball where it looks like this team is the team who we thought they were going to be against Kentucky and against LSU and against everybody else. So really good time to get it rolling right here before we get to Georgia. This game, I would say this game 2 weeks ago, going into the Oklahoma game was still a big game, but it was kind of like, Georgia, right? I hope we win, and it's become with two kind of like statement wins. It's become, let's go ahead and beat Georgia.
It was always the game you look forward to, even after the LSU loss, because now it's a must win. You can't drop that game. But the Georgia game means absolutely nothing if you don't go take care of business against Oklahoma, take care of business against Arkansas, win those 2 games, and now we're set up for this huge matchup where everything's on the line for this football team, right? You're right back into the playoff picture. AP poll, as of this recording, hasn't been released yet. I expect us to be, anywhere between 14 and 16, something like that, because there was several teams ahead of us that ended up losing on Saturday. So that helps us a little bit there. But huge game against Georgia coming up at 2:30 on Saturday. Really excited to get that going. But let's go ahead and take a look around the SEC, see how everybody fared before we get out of here, Hitch. And obviously, first game of the day was the Ole Miss Arkansas game that we just got done talking about. Oklahoma ends up dismantling Maine 59-14.
They were mad.
Jackson Arnold kind of got things going against the Black Bears there. And then our guy, Diego Pavia and the Vanderbilt Commodores walk into Jordan Hare Stadium and for the second straight year hand Hugh Freeze the loss in front of his home crowd with 2 different schools. Didn't understand the line when it came out. Me and you talked about that for all week ever since it came out, and turns out we were actually right on that one. So that one feels good.
Yeah, it's very few and far between when a line comes out and I'm confused about like that, and it turns out to be right. The story of this game was probably the defense, though. Man, that Vanderbilt defense is very good. Not that the Auburn offense is great, but they could. The Auburn offense couldn't do anything. I watched, much of this game too, and just Vanderbilt. It was only a 10-point win, but I mean, Vanderbilt was the best team on the field the whole game.
Yeah, and I think we knew that going into it. Vanderbilt gets bowl eligible with that win. Hitch at 6-3 now, and Auburn at 3-6 has to win out to make a bowl game. In year 2 for Hugh Freeze, I don't like their chances to do that with Alabama still on schedule, especially being in Tuscaloosa. So it looks like Auburn might be sitting at home come postseason time.
Vanderbilt beat Auburn and Alabama in the same year.
I heard that, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard somebody say, I think maybe it was Chase Parham or somebody, I think it's the first time since 1955 that has happened. What a stat that is, right?
There was a long shot. There was a long shot of Hugh in the 4th quarter yesterday of him just staring out, and the look of sadness and despair on his face was
just beaten down, wasn't it?
I mean, he had to go home and responded to every single Twitter comment and interaction that had been sent to him during the game just to make himself feel better. He had to have gone home and gotten on that phone quick.
Yeah, and I'm sure he did. Going down to Jacksonville, Florida, world's largest cocktail party. I know that's not the right term for it anymore because apparently it's too offensive or something. They've changed it to something else. It'll always be the cocktail party for me. Florida played a hell of a game, man, up 13-6 at halftime. They end up suffering an injury to DJ Lagway. He gets carted off the field, I believe. It didn't look good. So that's a tough break for Florida, especially when you're up against the number 2 team in the nation and such a big rival. And they weren't really able to do anything after that. They end up dropping this one 34-20. They do end up covering, though. So I guess that's a positive. But hate that for DJ Lagway. Florida played really good while he was in there. Defense played good for Florida. And Carson Beck ends up with 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he throws those 3 interceptions there in the first half. A couple of them pretty inexcusable. They look mortal, and against a defense like Ole Miss, you got to think that's something we're going to look to exploit next Saturday.
Yeah, that's just what I was fixing to say. Is one of the I watched just a small snippet of this game, but one of the plays I did get to see was a defensive line interception is what I'll call it. It was the pressure got to him, and he got hit as he threw a duck, and it was an interception. I mean, you got to think. The way our defensive line's been playing, I mean, it's prime for
licking their chops.
Saturday.
Yep, licking their chops. Going down to Starkville, Mississippi State, and UMass. UMass was actually leading 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, and that's probably pretty much where that ended. State goes on a run, ends up winning this one 45-20. So not a lot there. This is one shot. This is one of those lines that didn't make sense, right? And kind of like we talked about, when they don't make sense to you, you usually have to stay away from it. A&M was 2.5-point favorites on the road in South Carolina. Didn't play a real good first half. Were somehow able to keep that thing tied 20-20 going into halftime. And in my mind, watching it, I thought, well, if they were able to weather that kind of storm, then they're probably going to come out and make a statement in the second half and drop the hammer on South Carolina. It was right the opposite. South Carolina comes out, outscores them 24-0 in the second half, and pulls off a huge home upset over Texas A&M, 44-20. And look, that's a big win for Ole Miss, because now Ole Miss has that South Carolina in Columbia win on their resume, and they just knocked off a top 10 team there.
Yeah, we got to get as many good wins on that resume as we can, because there is one very ugly one on there.
Very bad one. There's one very bad one.
Yeah. This is a surprise. I mean, like you said, whenever Texas A&M went into halftime, it was 20-20. I thought, oh, they're lucky to be here. And the way that Mike Elko has coached his guys up this year, it really felt like he's done a better job of coaching than Shane Beamer. And it felt like Texas A&M was going to come out and just, make the right adjustments and kind of tear into the South Carolina defense. But boy, they sure didn't. And it got ugly quick in the second half.
Yeah, it did. So shout out Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. Big win for them, obviously. Kind of doesn't really, obviously from a playoff standpoint, it doesn't matter. But look, that gives them a little bit of momentum going into the back half of the back quarter of their schedule here. Maybe they can pick up a couple more wins, and hopefully that'll look like a really good win for Ole Miss by the time the year is all said and done. And then in Knoxville, Tennessee welcomed in the Kentucky Wildcats, whose lone SEC win is in Oxford, Mississippi, against the Rebels, unfortunately. Look, I don't know what it is about Tennessee in first halves. They don't play good in the first half for whatever reason. They're down 10-7 at halftime to a woefully incompetent Kentucky team, but end up coming out in the second half, scoring 21 points, outscored them 21-8 to win 28-18. Kentucky put up a little bit of a fight there, but my main takeaway from this one is Kentucky, if they're going to be a legitimate national title contender and try to go deep in this thing, they've got to get that first half figured out, because this is like a month straight of them really, really struggling in the first half. They go scoreless when they went to Arkansas. Lord, who'd they play? Against Alabama, they had, I think, either 0 or 3 points at halftime, something like that, and then only 7 here against Kentucky. Something that Heupel and the Volunteers are going to have to figure out if they're going to try to make a run at this thing. But credit to them, they still come out and get wins. So, and they ended up doing that again here.
Florida? Was it Florida that they started slow out?
Maybe
that's what it was. Yeah,
I think that is Alabama, Florida, and Arkansas. That sounds right.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually, of course, I mean, I guess it has gotten them because they've got a loss, but I mean, eventually, starting out slow like that's going to bite
It's
you.
going to bite you. Yeah.
And if they don't stop doing that, right, it's gonna bite them again
Mhm.
with who they have left on the schedule. But yeah, the only thing I thought about this game is, man, at least Kentucky put up a somewhat of a fight against the number 7
Yeah.
team in the country, so that looks a little better on that loss in Oxford.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, several upsets around the country and stuff like that. We'll see where Ole Miss lands in the AP poll when it comes out later on today. And that'll kind of tell you where Ole Miss is at. Are they back in the thick of things if they end up getting this win against Georgia? I'm sure me and Hitch are going to get together next week. It's a really big game. We'll do some sort of Georgia preview show for y'all leading up to the big showdown at 2:30 on Saturday. We'll go ahead and wrap this episode up right here, though. Hitch, I appreciate you joining me once again. We'll be back to
Yeah,
y'all
bro.
again next week. Recap the gambling show, see how that ended up going, and then also look at the Ole Miss Georgia game coming up on Saturday. Appreciate all of y'all tuning in like y'all do every single week, and we will holler at y'all here in a few days. Howdy, toddy.
Howdy, Todd.